Hello everyone, welcome back to Screenwork Entertainment. Last week I wasn't able to make a video on Mushoku Tensei episode 2, so this week I thought I would briefly touch on the differences from the light novel and then jump into episode 3. So let's strap in and strap on for this week's episode of Mushoku Tensei. Okay, so let's talk about episode 2, The Forest in the Dead of Night. Now I had to go back and reread some of the light novel because I could not remember 100% of everything that was different. But I did know some things were pretty obviously changed. For example, the fight between the snow drakes and the large tree tenant I knew was different. So I had to go brush up on the light novel, and now I definitely know the differences and I remember exactly what happened. First, though, before we get into that, let's talk about Sarah. I don't know why they decided to skip this part of the show, of the story. We never really know why Sarah hates Rudy so much. And she's just a complete B to him. But the novel explains this. See, the issue is she thinks Rudy is just some rich, spoiled brat trying to play adventurer. And since Rudy has a last name, that means he's a noble. Even though he's like a lower noble or middle noble, they still have last names. Where Sarah, she doesn't have a last name. And it never explains this in the anime. I really think it would have benefited for the show to explain why Sarah is acting the way she is towards Rudy, but we never get that. Also, it turns out Sarah's whole village, mother and father, were all killed by monsters. And the noble from the town over wouldn't do anything to help. So the whole village was destroyed. And where now Sarah hates all nobles. It comes to find out that noble may actually be related to Rudy, but he doesn't really talk about it too much. But that's more of episode 3 kind of thing. But anyways, I digress. So let's talk about the snow drakes. When Count Arrow enters the cave, in the anime we see Sarah almost fall and Rudy grabs her. All this is correct. All this is pretty accurate to the light novel. What we don't see though, we don't see the giant bats. We don't see the giant frogs. And also the whole party is fighting skeletons. It's a pretty cool part of the novel, but we don't get any of that. It's very disappointed. I feel like this whole episode could have been dedicated to the cave alone, and I think that would have benefited. But I guess it's not horrible that we didn't get to see those creatures and those fight scenes, but I just think it took a little bit from the show. So the other major difference I wanted to speak on is the fight between Rudy and the giant tree tenant. Now, in the novel, it wasn't like a long, drawn out fight or anything, but man, in the anime, it was like nothing was there. It was very disappointed. I was really looking forward to this part of the show. In the novel, Rudy gets hit several times, and it takes him a while to figure out how to do anything to this tree because it's so damn big. And once he finally figures it out, he's able to take it out pretty quickly and able to save Sarah. But we don't get any of this in anime, and that really sucks because I really wanted to see this part. In anime, Rudy just runs up and grabs Sarah and jumps in the water and takes off, and that's it. Now, maybe there wasn't enough time, or maybe they didn't have the budget to add this in, because I'm sure it cost. But I really think it would have been a really cool battle if they could have, animated that. I think it would have been looked really awesome. I was really disappointed. That's all we got. These are the two things that kind of really stood out to me on episode 2. But to be honest, I did like the episode. I am a huge fan of it, of the whole show in general and the story. But I was highly disappointed on some of the fight scenes we did not get to witness. But by no means does that ruin the show, for me. And I don't think it should ruin the show for you either. Okay, now let's get into episode 3, Abrupt Approach. This episode followed pretty, a little closer than I thought that I thought it would from the light novels, and I did not think they were going to show Rudy, trying to knife himself the way he did, because they did this in the novel too. I did not think they were going to put that on screen. Now I had to watch this episode twice because I just want to make sure I get all the details. And both times I watched it, it really got my heart racing. Whenever all the crap is going on, and it's just really sad. It's just really sad to see what Rudy is going through. And some of the things Sarah says to him, man, it is rough. Now, I don't want to touch on every little minor change from the light novels. There are plenty of other YouTube videos doing that. I just want to touch on the things I feel are larger in scope and I think would benefit the anime, make it better, give more depth to the show. But I think this episode really hit its mark. This episode, we see Rudy and Sarah on a date, and afterwards, they get intimate. I'll be honest, I am not positive if what Sarah is saying is the truth. That she's doing this just because Rudy saved her life. She's just paying him back. I don't really think this is true, but there are some signs that points to yes, that is accurate. But let me know in the comments, is Sarah just doing that because is she coming on to Rudy to pay him back because she feels like she owes him, or does she really have feelings for Rudy? I'm leaning more towards the side that she does have feelings for him. She just doesn't want to admit it. But everything goes so horribly wrong, it was just an easy way out for her. Anyway, so after Rudy isn't able to perform, Sarah says something to his face that, man, it's just so messed up. She tells him that, hey, I'm not really interested in you. I'm just paying you back. And that, to me, was like twisting a dagger, in his heart. Who's already has nothing there. It's already so empty. That was just even more. So afterwards, Rudy, he's at the bar getting drunk, and Soldet runs in. And he's being his typical self, just harassing him. And finally, Rudy can't take it anymore, and he just starts teeing off on him, and Soldet doesn't do anything doesn't try to protect himself at all. Doesn't try to do anything. He just lets Rudy go at it. Let him talk, let him get his feelings out. This is the first time we've seen him really get his feelings out. And maybe just like the whole Mandela effect, but I could have sworn the whole intention behind Soldet the whole time is for this, to get Rudy to snap and for him to let his feelings out. But I didn't get that from the episode. And when I went back to read it, I didn't get that either from the novel. I'm like, man, where did I get that from? But that's just, I don't know. That's just what I thought when I read it. So once Soldet really finds out what's going on with Rudy, they kind of become buds. And he takes him to a lady of the evening, something that he thinks is going to help him with his issue. But it doesn't. It backfires. And this part of the episode is so sad because whenever Sarah overhears what Rudy's talking about, he's talking trash, but he's pretty drunk and he shouldn't have said those things. I'm not saying he should have said those things. He should not have said those things about Sarah. But when she overhears him saying this and what she says to Rudy, he just loses it, drops down to his knees and decides, all right, I have nothing left. This is it. I tried and I'm here and I failed. I'm done. And he takes that knife right to his throat. But right then, Soldet comes in and saves his life. If it wasn't for Soldet there, he would have been dead right then and there. And that was really, man, it was reading that first time in a novel was pretty rough. And then seeing it on screen was pretty rough as well. It's pretty heartbreaking. But that's really the end of the episode. Soldet convinces Rudius to leave with him and his party and to go adventuring together. And that's where the next part of the story continues with them. And it's actually a pretty good part of the story. At the very end, after the end credits, we see Elise, if I'm saying her name right, the elf who used to be in Paul's party. She is at a pub, and we see two guys talking about Quagmire Rudy. And she's like, oh, wait a second. I want to know more about this guy. And they're telling a story about him killing a dragon. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, if they don't show this part in the damn show, I'm going to be so pissed off because that fight between the dragon and Rudy was so epic in the damn light novel. If they pass over that, I'm going to be really, really pissed. But, overall, I really liked this episode. It was very sad. And I am ready to get to something more not so depressing. But I do know what lies ahead. And it's not as depressing as this. I'll give you that. I am looking forward to it. I do know that. But let me know what you thought in the comments. Is Sarah, is she really in love with Rudy, or is she just pretending? Do any of the differences bother you between the light novel and the show? Let me know what you think in the comments. And I will be back next week with the next episode. I appreciate you checking us out, and like and subscribe if you haven't. And peace out.